this video is going to go up or if it's going to go up. But I've been late on my menstrual and I've been feeling kind of nauseous. So I went and picked up a pregnancy test. So yeah, I just took it. I gotta wait on the results. I'm so nervous. Not because we're like upset if it's gonna happen. We're definitely happy if it does happen. It's definitely not planned. We were planning on having another child like within the next year when Amelia turns 2. But if God has other plans, God has other plans. So we're gonna just wait and see what it says. Haven't looked at it yet. I'm just waiting for it to really process and everything. This is the same test I took when I was pregnant with Amelia, so I'm pretty sure it's accurate. I don't really know how many days or even weeks that I'm late, just because around the time that I think I did have my menstrual, it was when school had started back up. Pre-planning, I was planning and getting ready for Amelia's birthday, so it was just like a hectic time, just like this is a hectic time. We're like moving back and forth. I just brought some more stuff over to the house, and we're gonna finish painting today and hopefully ripping up some carpet. Oh my gosh, I'm like just shaking. This is so nerve-wracking. But let's see. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We're gonna have another baby. Oh my gosh. No way. I thought it was like completely all in my head. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm also like so emotional because last time I found out with Keith and this time I'm gonna find out just by myself and he doesn't know yet. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I'm gonna like just call him and tell him because it's our second baby, or if I should surprise him. I have no idea. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Round 2. Good thing we moved into a bigger house so we actually have space for this baby. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, you guys. And now he's here. I cannot believe that I'm filming this video a year after I was pregnant. A year ago today, I didn't know I was pregnant, but I'm pretty sure that I already was. It's just so crazy to me to think that a year goes by so fast, and just how everything happened and played out. So I'm here. What time is it? It's 6:30 in the morning. Both kids are still asleep, so I hardly get this time to myself in the morning. So I'm going to quickly go through Hudson's birth story and yeah, tell you how everything went. So first, we found out that we were pregnant on September 7th, and that was exactly 1 month after Amelia turned 1. I just can't even like believe that it happened so quickly. Keith and I didn't want them to be super close, but we also didn't want them to be super far apart, so we weren't really on the same page on when we wanted them. When Amelia turned 1, I was so devastated that I wanted another baby like right away. I couldn't believe how fast the year had gone by. And sure enough, it happened. So we got pregnant, or we found out we were pregnant on September 7th, and our due date was May the 5th, I believe. That's right. I went in for my initial checkup. It got pushed up to May 1st just because he was measuring so big. Alright, so if you've been following me on Instagram or Facebook, then you would know that that last month of pregnancy that I had was super hard. I felt like I was pregnant for 1,000 days. I was in so much pain, just like with my pelvis, my back, my legs, and I had to stop teaching around the 15th of April because I couldn't do it anymore. I was also having prodromal labor, which is real contractions, just like very sporadic. So my body was technically in labor for almost a full month, which was super hard. And with the year that we had, we came back during a pandemic year. Granted, it was the end of the year, but finding a sub last minute was just so hard regardless. So I just decided to not go, got a doctor's note from my doctor, and I just was not able to work anymore. It wasn't fair to me or to my kids just to be so like inconsistent going in and out. Some days were great days where I didn't have any contractions, and then some days were pretty bad. I couldn't predict when those things were going to happen, so I just decided to stay home, and I'm very glad I did because I got some more one-on-one time with Amelia, which I hardly was going to get when this new baby came. As I was home, I was continuing to have labor pains and just so much pain. I just couldn't wait to have him. I honestly thought he was going to come the last week of April, and that definitely didn't happen. I was dilated to a 2 and 3 for a week and a half. It was just so much was going on, and I was like, why is my body not doing this? The weekend before I delivered, so I delivered May the 3rd, but that weekend before, that Friday before, I was so confused. The one doctor was telling me, you know, you should just go ahead and get induced, and it was actually my midwife that I had seen very often. And then when I was actually in the hospital, because I went into the hospital twice for like false labor, and then one time when I was sick and I wanted to check on Hudson because we didn't feel him move as much. So I was just so confused. I didn't know what to do. I was calling my mother-in-law, I was calling my mom, I was like asking for advice from other women that had been through the same thing. I've heard inductions are scary, but it's my second pregnancy, it's gonna be fine, your body knows what to do, it'll go a lot faster. But I was just scared. I don't do very good with strong medicine. I wrote a blog post on Amelia's birth story, so I'm not going to get into that too much, but my epidural worked with Amelia, and it worked too well where I couldn't feel any contractions, so I didn't know when to push. So ultimately they ended up taking it off. So I just didn't know how like the Pitocin was going to go. I didn't know what other meds they were going to give me. I was so confused, and I'm really, really glad I listened to my gut and my heart, and I really didn't want to be induced no matter how much pain I was in, how ready I was to meet him. I decided not to get induced that Friday. So the Monday I was supposed to go in to get an ultrasound to see how big the baby was going to be, kind of talk about options then, and I gave it to God because I knew that I was not going to be able to make that decision by myself. And on Sunday night leading into Monday morning, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up in excruciating pain, and this pain was familiar, but it was also a lot stronger than before, and I didn't want to get my hopes up, so I sat in bed for about an hour. Keith was downstairs sleeping, I believe. I just think I was like getting up too many times in the night, and he had to go to work the next morning. So I laid in bed for about an hour, just clinging on to my sheets, and finally I was like, this is it, like this has to be it. There's no way this amount of pain is going to send me to a false labor, and if I go to the hospital and they send me back, I'm just going to wait in the parking lot because I did not want to be sent home anymore. So I text my mom around 2 a.m. Thankfully she answers because we needed someone to watch Amelia. Obviously, while we were going to the hospital, we couldn't bring her with us. And then 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning is a very hard time for anyone to come and watch her because everyone's asleep. So luckily she answered. She was on her way. We live about 15 minutes away, so it wasn't a super long drive for her. I got all my stuff ready, woke Keith up, and he was kind of on the fence, like, is this really it? But I knew, like, I was like clenching onto every piece of furniture that I could find. My mom got there, she went inside, went to sleep in our room, and, you know, she hugged me, told me she loved me, good luck. It was really weird to not have my mom there with COVID and everything going on. You could only have one support person, and I obviously chose Keith to be there, but it was really weird not having my mom there. But if we did have her there, then we don't know who would watch Amelia. So it ended up working out pretty well. We are on the way there. I had a couple contractions before we actually got to the hospital. I checked in before. I still had to do some paperwork as I was there, and then waiting for a room to be ready. I was having contractions through all of this, so I was miserable. I couldn't wait to get back into a room and just relax. I didn't get my epidural until about an hour and a half after that. But yeah, we got checked into a room. We, did the whole thing, got checked in, got my IVs started. I tested positive for the strep test, so I had to get antibiotics in me, which was the whole reason why I was so confused on whether to get inducted or not, because I knew I had to get those in, and I just didn't know how fast this labor was going to go. So I knew that I needed to get it in somehow, some way, and I was just scared that I wasn't going to be able to get those meds in to protect him before he came out. But luckily I did. I started my first round as soon as I got there. My water hadn't broken yet, but they did check me, and I was dilated to a 6-7 at about 2:15 in the morning. This all happened so fast. Like I said, my mom lives super, super close to me, and we lived about 11 minutes from the hospital with no traffic, so we were there pretty quickly and got checked in pretty fast. So the next thing that happened was my epidural, and you really need to advocate for yourself because he was ready to just put in the needle and go, but I knew a contraction was starting. Just because mine kind of come in waves, and mine's at the front of my belly, kind of like a really, really bad menstrual cramp. So I felt one coming on, and I was like, oh, can we hold on a second? Because if I didn't say anything, the nurses were like just so busy making sure like I was kind of held down in that little scrunchy fetal position that you have to be when you're sitting up and getting this giant needle stuck in your back. So she wasn't checking the monitor, but I could feel one coming on, so I told him to wait, and I'm really glad that I did because I was able to, because he was ready. Like, he was just so ready to put the needle in no matter what time it was, with a contraction or no contraction. So I'm really glad that I voiced myself, because that's really hard for me to do sometimes. I'm just really shy, but I'm glad I was like, hold on for a second, I am having a contraction. He put the needle in after I was done with my contraction. So after the epidural, I felt great. The main reason I wanted to get it done was because I needed to sleep. That was about 1 o'clock in the morning that my contraction started, and I knew I was going to be in the hospital for so long. I also wanted Keith to sleep. We both don't do very well on no sleep, so I know that I wanted him to be his best to coach me through it, and I know I wanted to be my best to actually be able to push through labor. So they come and check me around 5 o'clock in the morning. I was dilated to about a 7-8, so a little bit of progression, not too much, so they let me go back to sleep. I think we woke up around 7 because that was shift change for the nurses. So we got new nurses in, and I got to meet my midwife. She was great. She was a great coach. She wasn't overly talkative, she wasn't too talkative, so the room was kind of quiet here and there, but I mean, what else could you do? I wasn't playing any sorts of music. That distracts me a lot, so I just didn't want any of that in there. I ended up not doing it naturally, of course, and this time the epidural worked a lot better in my sense, where I could still feel contractions. I just think this birth was gonna go a lot faster no matter what. Keith and I ended up sleeping a little bit more from 7 or so. We were just ready to meet him, and about 7:10 they come and check me, and they're like, oh, you're ready, it's time to push. And it was just like last time, where you just kind of lay there and thinking like, oh yeah, I have to go through this, but it doesn't really hit you until they kind of say those magic words like, it's time to push. So my biggest fear during the whole thing was having to go into emergency C-section, because I didn't know how big he was. So I felt huge already, but I have big babies, so I was just really trusting God in this process to just kind of like help and guide, and luckily I did not have to have a C-section. So 7:30 rolls around. They start coming in and prepping like the baby station. There's more people in the room, and I don't remember their faces, but I remember a lot more talking going on. So there was like extra teams of nurses, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit, because I was like, is there something wrong? Like, what's going on? I hadn't even started pushing yet. That's how bad my anxiety is. So around 8 o'clock we start pushing, and it's just like before. I mean, it was just like that weird, you kind of like talk in between your contractions, you talk in between your pushes, but it ended up getting really, really intense those last 5 to 10 minutes that I was pushing. So Keith was a great coach. I was so glad that he was there. He was telling me to keep going. This time wasn't harder. To me, it felt longer, even though it was shorter. I think I really wanted to take in the moment, and I wasn't so scared this time. So I honestly think this birthing experience was a lot better for me. So he was just taking his sweet old time, and I knew he was big, but I didn't know how big he was going to be, and I was still shocked when I found out his height and his weight. The last 2 minutes of pushing was like the most excruciating because it was really, really hard to get his head out. But once it was out, it was just smooth sailing after that. He was born on May 3rd at 8:37 a.m. and I cannot believe how much he looked like Amelia when he first came out. He didn't cry at first when he came out. We were all just kind of like looking around waiting for him to cry. What were probably seconds felt like a minute, but finally we heard him cry. Keith told me, I didn't get to see this because you just don't really have that view of them when you're laying back on a bed. He told me that his cord was wrapped around his neck a couple times, but the the midwife just unwrapped it. Everything was fine. And they placed him on my chest, and it was just the best feeling ever to hear him cry and to hug him and to have a boy. Like, we were just so used to having a girl, and little boys are just so different, and his cry was different. His voice just felt different. So it was super, super sweet and super emotional. And yes, Keith cried. If you're wondering, he cried at Amelia's, and he cried on this one. It's just it's so cool. I'm sure it's so cool for him to see from like that perspective. To me, I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad I'm done. I'm so glad I did it, and now I have my baby. And the one thing that I did notice when they put him on my chest, though, was that his face looked a different color, and I wasn't sure if it was the lighting or what. And I was like just like still kind of in a daze and a shock from when they were cleaning him off and putting him on my chest. So when they took him back to bathe him and all that stuff, they told me that his face was very bruised, so I guess he was just so big and he just came out bruised, or there was just a lot of pressure going on. The only reason that we should be concerned is because usually bruised faces come with jaundice later on, so we just had to make sure that we were looking out for that. He told me his height and his weight. He weighed 9 pounds 1 ounce and was 21.5 inches in length, so definitely big baby. Amelia was 8'4", 21.5 inches. So we have very tall, chunky babies, at least in the newborn stage. He thinned out when he got home just because it's normal for babies to lose weight, but he is still very tall. So we went to our recovery room, which is a lot smaller, which kind of stinks, but it's fine. It's just a hospital. We knew that we were only going to be there for a couple days. So we got settled in. Keith unfortunately had to leave at night, so this was like in the morning. So he stayed with me until about late afternoon. He just wanted Amelia to have someone comfortable and familiar that she's with. Not that she's not familiar with her family, but her sleeping overnight anywhere else without us there. So Keith came home after he picked her up, and he just did dinner and bedtime with her while I stayed my first night with Hudson at the hospital. And let me tell you, that was a very, very rough night. He was up, I think, every hour, I believe, to like nurse or eat or, whatever. That day that, all of the overnight stuff happened, Keith came back to the hospital in the morning, and we thought that we were going to go home that day just because COVID, they need the rooms, and our recovery was pretty smooth. I felt great. I always feel great after my deliveries. I was ready just to walk and, go home. Everything was, great recovery-wise for me. They have to do a 24-hour newborn check just to make sure everything is fine with their vitals, and I kind of knew something was off. I didn't say anything just because trying to figure out a fresh newborn is so hard because they can cry and be uncomfortable for everything. But I just remember newborns being more sleepy. And so I was really shocked and concerned that he woke up that many times during the night, and he was just so uncomfortable because sometimes he didn't even want to eat. So they took him back to get his vitals rechecked, just this whole newborn scan, kind of like a well check for newborns. And he didn't come back. I get so emotional during this part. I don't know why, because everything ended up being fine. He didn't come back because his oxygen levels were low, and so we didn't really know what that meant. No one could really tell us anything because they would have to do more extensive testing, so they went ahead and admitted him into the NICU, which was hard because we didn't have that experience with Amelia, so we weren't prepared for it. And I think of all those moms that were there that, you know, have babies with extreme, like, life-threatening conditions, and everyone was right when they told me that he's in a really good place, and they worked so hard. They worked so hard to calm me down, tell me that everything was going to be fine, and it ended up being just fine. It was just really hard to have your baby wheeled out, and I took a shower when they did that. They wheeled him out, and they said they would be right back, and after I showered and he still wasn't back, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder what's taking so long. And then they came in and told me that he was admitted into the NICU for oxygen levels. So of course, as like a second-time parent, you're still technically a new parent just because every baby is so different. I didn't really know what to think. So they were just telling me all the possible options that, you know, we have, like checking his heart, making sure that there's no fluid in his lungs. So for the first day, they had him on a little like oxygen breather plus monitoring his levels, which they were going back and forth, which is very, very scary. The second day that he was gonna be in there, I had to go home. I couldn't stay if I was fine. Like, if I had something like medically wrong with me, or if I had a C-section, they would have allowed that extra day. So I had to go home without my baby, and that was really hard. It was really hard. I was up every 2 hours pumping for him, and I woke up every 2 hours to check in on him. The nurses were so great. They were so amazing, telling me that he was doing great and that everything looked very promising. That day that I had to go home, he was taken off of his oxygen, just at room oxygen, to see how much he could take in. And thankfully he was doing great. We had so many love, prayer, and supports just going around our whole entire family and friends. So we were so thankful for that, because it definitely worked. They say that if the baby can't get room level oxygen, or the oxygen levels are dipping, they have to like stay an extra day or a certain amount of hours and then get off of the oxygen again and then get back on it. So it was hard to know that that was a possibility, but we're thankful that I'm sorry guys, it's so hard to talk about because I haven't really talked about it besides the time it was happening. So I thought I had all my emotions out there. I guess it's still not fun to talk about. So after our NICU scare, we got to bring him home and to meet Amelia, and she was so sweet with him. I really lucked out with two great chill babies. Hudson loves to sleep, loves to eat, and is very calm. And the whole birth experience was just great, and it was great because it was different, and I'm really glad it was. Minus the NICU time, I wish we didn't have to spend time in there, but I know now that, you know, we could get through that, and it doesn't always go as expected. I just thought that it was going to be the same, like, gave birth, everything ended up being the same until that check-in. I'm really glad it worked out the way it did, and it honestly made me a stronger mom. I've had to deal with hospitals with Amelia before, and so, you know, with her, I'm like, you're a tough cookie, you can do it. And now I know Hudson can be the same. So definitely it's hard on your mama heart, but it ends up all working out, and it ends up all being okay. So yeah, now we have our big 9-pound, 1-ounce baby boy that is probably close to 15-16 pounds now, because he is almost 4 months. He's about 2.5 weeks shy from being 4 months, which is just so crazy to me. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm so happy to have 2 little babies. I'm sorry that my birth story wasn't like super fun and exciting, but just with everything. I hope that anyone that may be listening may have, you know, some sort of connection to this, whether you have a big baby, easy labor, or you've been a NICU mama. It's all not easy, but we're just really blessed and happy to be able to bring this beautiful baby home. I wish he was down here so I could show you guys, but don't worry, there'll be more vlogs with him in it. It's 7, so I'm probably gonna have to go upstairs and brace myself for the crazy today. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. Bye.